In this video, we are going to be going over some of the constructions that you often see degrees in. Remember that there are 2 degrees beyond positive, and you can see them over here. Hopefully you can zoom in a bit, and we have the comparative that you'll note by the letters IOR, meaning obviously more whatever, or rather whatever, or just with an ER, stronger, fortior, fortius. And then the superlative that you recognize by either the issimus, rimus, or limus, meaning the most whatever. And as well, remember that every single word in green, 30 forms. Every single word in blue, there are 30 forms. Every single word in, I don't even know what color this is, red, I suppose, 30 forms. But all words in orange, the adverbs, only 1 form. And then over here, remember, you have the irregulars that you just simply have to memorize. There's no way around it, but you have to memorize them. So, let's talk about what you will very often find whenever you see a comparative. Now, when I say that, let's say, I am stronger, you would want to know stronger than what? The word in Latin that translates as than, very often, is the word quam. However, there are actually 5 translations of quam. Those 5 translations are the first 2, the word how, asking a question, and the word how as an exclamation. So you would say, quam laetus sum, how happy I am. Then, as well, you remember that we saw quam, and by the way, there's going to be embedded 3 items in this video that will obviously earn you a free 100 for watching. From the qui, qui, quod chart, the relatives, qui, qui, quod, quis, 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 quick, 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 quim, quam. The girl whom the boy loves. And so that would be the translation of whom. Or if it's referring to something that's a non-person, like the carriage, which is feminine, the carriage which. So the other translation is which. The 4th translation is the translation when you see quam hanging around a comparative. And that would be than. The translation than. So whenever you see a quam, see if it's hanging around a comparative, those letters IOR, and it will be translating than. And I'm going to go over some sentences that have these examples in it in just a moment. And the 5th and final usage of whenever you see a quam, so this would be plus comparative. You also can see quam plus a superlative, in which quam is going to translate as blank as possible. And so, like I said, in just a moment, we're going to see some examples of this, and you'll be able to see it then in context. The other thing that you need to know when it comes to degrees, and I'll put it over here, is that instead of a quam, what you can have is a word in the ablative case that shows the comparison. This is what we call the ablative of comparison. We've learned before that you have the translation for an ablative by, with, because of, from, in, on, at. We now add a new translation, and that translation is than. So instead of a quam, you can have an ablative that shows the comparison, and we're going to see examples of this in just a moment. And you also, one more, can have what is known as the ablative of degree of difference. And in that way, with the ablative degree of difference, you can say by how much more is something than another. The 2 most often used words for ablative of degree of difference is multo, by a lot, and paulo, by a little. So let's go and look at some sentences that have some examples of these and see if we can't figure out how to translate them. And I'm going to right now get rid of the quams translations so that we can see this a bit more clearly. And that is your first word, quam. That's the first item you put in for your free 100. So let's take a look at the statement I have on the board. Magister est fortior quam felix. The teacher is not strong. That would be fortis. Instead, it's fortior. Stronger. And then you can see the word here, quam, is hanging around the comparative, and so it says, the teacher is stronger than Felix. Now, if Felix was rather near to my strength, I would say Magister est fortior, and I could add my degree of difference, in which I could say that the teacher is stronger. Paolo, I can lift 100 pounds. Felix can lift 99 pounds. And so, the teacher is stronger by a little bit. Idiomatically, we would say the teacher is a little stronger. But literally is what it says. The teacher is stronger by a little than Felix. Likewise, what you can do is that you don't need the quam at all. And instead, you can take the thing that's being compared, which is Felix versus the teacher, and you merely put that word in the ablative case, and it will become an ablative of comparison. So it would be Felike. So here the teacher is stronger. By, with, because of, from, in, on, at. I know the translation is than, because it's hanging around the IOR comparative. Then Felix by a little bit. But let's say the teacher can lift 100 pounds and Felix can only lift 20. Here, we would keep in that degree of difference by a lot. The teacher is stronger by a lot than Felix. Stronger than Felix by a lot. So as you can see, the quam Felix and the Felike are interchangeable. Quam can show the comparison. The ablative can show the comparison as well. So look at the next sentence. Sextus gives, Dodari dedicatus, flowers, and then puellae here, since we do have a ditransitive verb, is the indirect receiver of that direct object. So the teacher gives flowers to, or not teacher, but Sextus. Sextus gives flowers to a girl. A girl, pulcriori. Remember that all comparatives are third declension. Variant is, I in the dative case, modifying puellae. So what kind of a girl does he give flowers to? A girl prettier than Cornelia. Now I want to point out something here. Whenever a quam, and we know that quam is translated as than because it's hanging around the IOR comparative, the word that is being compared with that quam will be in the exact same case as what it's being compared to. So what's being compared? The girl and Cornelia. And so, since the girl is in the dative case, Cornelia is in the dative case. Like up at the top, teacher and Felix are being compared. Teacher is in the nominative, so Felix is in the nominative as well. And so, that is why then Cornelia is dative. Now, if I wanted to, I could, instead of quam Cornelii, simply take Cornelia and put it in the ablative, to be the ablative of comparison. By, with, because of, from, in, on, at, than Cornelia. So Sextus gives flowers to a girl prettier than Cornelia. And you could have, obviously, added, if you so wish, by a little bit, or by a lot. We call that, again, the ablative degree of difference. It tells you by how much is it going to be, more, whatever. Let's look at the third one. Cornelius gives a stick to Davos. Again, with the ditransitive verb, we know that Davo here is not ablative, but it's dative, receiving that stick. Now here we have gra, we, us. The reason why gra, we, us is because stick is accusative singular neuter. And remember over here, for the nominative and accusative singular neuter, because nominative and accusative are the same for neuters, it will have not an IOR but an IUS. Those are the only two forms out of all 30 that do not have an IOR. And so, we know what kind of a stick it is. Gravis means heavy. Gravius means heavier. Quam lapidem, than a rock, than a stone. Again, because we are using quam for the comparison, that lapidem is the same case as what it's being compared to. If I wanted, yet again, instead of quam lapidem, you get rid of the quam, and instead you would just put lapide. And I know to translate it than a rock because it's hanging around a comparison. Cornelius gives a stick $2. A stick heavier, because of from and on that, than a rock. Third one, or fourth one. Same sentence essentially, but different in that you have graviore, now modifying bacalo in the ablative because no ditransitive. It's your ablative of instrument dawis, beats geta with a stick heavier than a rock. Again, do you see the case of lapide and how it is now ablative because with that quam it's being compared to the stick, and with quam, same case. Without a quam, it would just be lapide as the ablative of comparison. And again, you can very often see an ablative of comparison or a quam, either one with that ablative of degree of difference, multo paulo. We'll see some examples of it. In the city, Cornelia notices, sentio sentire, certain boys. So quosdam, remember whenever you have qui quod with a dam on the end of it, that dam is going to now make the new meaning a certain or certain, but you look at the quos part, not the dam part, to tell what it's modifying. In the city, Cornelia notices certain boys, more annoying, not annoying boys, but more annoying, sexto, than sextus, by, with, because of, from, in, on, at. If you wanted to say, you can add in the paulo, more annoying by a little bit. Or you can add in molto, more annoying by a lot. Or you could add tanto, more annoying by so much. Idiomatically, again, we would say so much more annoying. Your second word, comparison. To put in the quiz, comparison. Now, that is what we have here. The ablative of comparison. More annoying than sextus. We could again interchange that comparison to incorporate quam. Quam. But now, since there's a quam, we would have to put sextus in the case that would be identical to pueros, because with the quam, it requires the word that's being compared to be in the same case as what it's being compared to. Then sextus. Then sextus. So quam sextum is the equivalency of sexto. The next one, Mr. Iverson, Coach Iverson, is the strongest. Here you see it is a superlative. Fortissimus. He might be the strongest teacher, so that's why I say Iverson is the strongest teacher. Magister Iverson is the strongest said. But after exercise for many days, Adams is not the strongest, but quam fortissimus. Here the quam is hanging around fortissimus, as strong as possible. As strong as possible. Still doesn't mean I'm the strongest, but remember that quam plus a superlative as blank as possible. Adams is as strong as possible. I might not be as strong as Mr. Iverson, but after exercise for many days, I can become as strong as possible. Quam fortissima. Sextus wants to give flowers, and they are quam pulcherimas flores. So without the quam, it would just be very beautiful flowers. But with the quam, he wants to give flowers as beautiful as possible. Maybe the florist he goes to is not the best florist. It doesn't have the most beautiful flowers. But he can at least get the best that they have. And so he wants to give as pretty as possible flowers, puelai pulcherimai, to the very beautiful, most beautiful girl. Quam plus a superlative as blank as possible. Just a superlative, the blankest, the most blank, the very blank. most beautiful girl, very beautiful girl, beautifulest girl. The next one. Aurelia makes food. Now, here, meliorum. Remember, you've got to know and memorize your irregulars. Melior, melius, is the comparative to bonus. Bonus is good. In English, we say good, and we don't say gooder, we say better. It's irregular in English. And so you do not say bonior, it is rather melior. And so here, meliorium is modifying kibum. So what kind of food does Aurelia make? Aurelia makes food better than, do you see how quam is hanging around the comparative? Than other women. And so here, you would have the other women in the same case, because they're using the quam, as Aurelia, because that's what's being compared. Aurelia making food versus other ladies making food. And so here, if I wanted to, I could get rid of the quam and just put alteris in the ablative, feminis. Makes food better than other women. Better food. Compare that to Aurelia makes food better than wine. See, now it's the food and the wine that's being compared. Her ability as a food maker versus her ability as a wine maker. So that case after a quam tells you what's being compared. The next one, a cook of Cornelius, the cook of Cornelius makes the best food of all. Very often, whenever you have a superlative, you will have a genitive part of a whole, or a partitive genitive, the best of all of them. So of all the ones, the best food of all that food. And then finally, here, maius is again irregular. You just got to memorize it. And it's modifying as maius, either something nominative singular neuter or accusative singular neuter. And so it says, Titus wants a bigger cup, a larger cup, dative for the wine, but he wants minor aquam, less, smaller water for the wine. Remember that they mix together the water to dilute the wine. So he wants less water, smaller water. We wouldn't say that. It doesn't sound right to us to say smaller water. We would say less water, but smaller water and less water, it's the same. So that's it. You've got your ablative comparison, ablative degree of difference, and remember, as blank as possible. And that's your last word, possible. Possible. For those translations of quam and the constructions that you see.